Hi, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for calling me.
Yeah, good to see you. And thanks for agreeing to answer the five questions. And we're going to look at five questions on grief today. But before we do that, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm the preaching minister for Forsyth Church of Christ in Monroe, Louisiana. I've been married to Maggie for 31 years, and we have two children. We have Nicole, who is um, made us the grandparents, and she lives on the Georgia coast. And then we had John Robert, who passed away 11 years ago when he was 18 years old. And we love living here. We enjoy it very much.
Yeah, it's a nice town, and I passed through. I guess it was not too long ago, and got to enjoy a cup of coffee with you, and that was a good time.
Good.
And you've been an avid blogger. I've been doing that for I don't know how many years.
Yeah, but I was a blogger when blogging was cool.
Yeah,
Now nobody reads them anymore, but yeah, I still post. I try to do a weekly Bible study there, and I like to do it. I kind of miss the old days when it was the way we communicated about what's going on with our lives, but Facebook overtook that, and
yeah,
it's okay too. So
yeah.
yeah, I love all social media. I enjoy keeping up with everybody, um, and and the blog kind of has faded in the background a little bit, but I still use it some.
Yeah. Well, I've asked you to answer these five questions on grief because I know you've experienced grief personally, but you've also done a lot of work on that, and you have a lot of great resources on your blog. And when this video goes up, I'll be sure to link to that in the comments so people can find those resources. But as we begin to think about grief, what's one thing that you wish that people understood about grief?
Well, if I had to pick, I think that the idea that you get over it is a mythological idea. Anytime we look at somebody and we say, well, I don't really understand why they haven't gotten over it yet, we
Mm.
are really not addressing the issue that grief is permanent, that when we lose someone that we love, we will never see them again. And that doesn't change. It doesn't matter if it's been, for us, it's been 11 years. I know people who are out 30, 40 years who still shed some tears when they talk about their child that they lost. So grief doesn't really go away. You don't get over it. Um, and I think in many ways, it changes who you are. It's for me, it's become the subtext of my life. Everything I do is sort of seen in light of the loss that we had, and I don't think that goes away. And I think a lot of people who haven't suffered a significant loss, can't really picture that.
Yeah, yeah,
Comes out sometimes in the things they say. Like, well, I know you miss your son. I had an old dog that I died. I sure did love that dog.
yeah.
You
Hmm.
just have to be nice and say, "Are you insane?"
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we have to realize that people mean well, but sometimes the things they say are not very helpful. um, well, what are some of the ways that people have ministered to you over the years in your time of grief that you found helpful?
I think initially, in the very early days, just their presence, just I didn't really need anybody to say anything to me, just to let me talk or not talk about it. I had one friend that called me on the phone every day for almost 6 months, and those weren't always very long conversations. He wasn't somebody who lived nearby, so he couldn't come see me, um, but I knew he was thinking about me, and we talked for a few minutes, and that would be it. And other friends, lots of friends, of course, checked in. But I think that was just the presence, just being present in our life was helpful. But I think over time, the most influential thing was that people introduced us to other people who were on a similar journey. And I remember a dinner, sitting around a table at a restaurant where one of our elders at the church here had introduced us to another couple who had lost a child, who ran a grief recovery group, and just to sit there with them and for them to ask a couple of questions and just listen to us, and to know they've really been through this same exact thing, and so we became a part of their group, and I still attend their group meetings. It's once a month. Compassionate Friends. It's an international organization, and then we've had other friends that introduced us to Grief Share, and we participate in that now for many years. So I think that, to me, that was really important, because we felt like nobody could really understand the pain we were going through except somebody who's already been through it. And that helped us to meet those people and to go into a meeting, and especially a Compassionate Friends meeting, and they're smiling and laughing and, telling something funny that happened to them. And you're like, how are these people laughing? How are they smiling? I couldn't imagine myself doing that.
Yeah.
But it gave me hope and said, that's where we're going. We don't want to be what we are right now in 10 years. We want to be able to live and love and still identify that loss as really important. So I think that those introductions really were very helpful.
Yeah. Well, I know that you've ministered to others over the years, either through your blog or, to the people there in Monroe through Grief Share or some other ways. What have you learned over those years ministering to people that are dealing with grief?
Yeah. Wow. Let's see. We might need to get coffee. It's going to be a while. Just real quick, though, I think to accept other people's grief as it is, that someone would talk to you and tell you what they're feeling and what they're experiencing is quite a gift. And you don't have to fix it. In fact, you can't fix it. So it's better to just let them express their grief however they feel at that moment, and answer questions honestly. Sometimes I have wondered about that, but one particular person asked me, their daughter, I think, had passed away. This has been several years ago, and he wanted to know how long before I can feel like I can get back to a regular life. And so I said, well, you don't need to think about months, you need to think about years. And he just, as you could tell, it was crushing news to him. And I thought, maybe he shouldn't have heard that yet. Maybe I should have waited. But I do think being honest, when people ask, they're going through the most difficult thing that they'll experience in life. And so an honest answer, and sometimes the honest answer is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think one thing that that helps is to talk about the person that they lost by name. Ask a question about them. Sometimes people feel like, well, I shouldn't bring it up because it might make them sad. Well, you're too late. We're already sad. So we already cry every day. We already have this immense hole in our life. But we loved that person. And we loved John Robert. We had him for 18 years. We like it when his friends connect with us on Facebook and tell us a story about something he said or did. It's been a long time. There's no new pictures or no new stories. We like to sometimes tell stories about something he did or said. So it doesn't make us sad. The saddest thing would be as if everybody just forgot he ever existed.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing I've learned about grief. And a big thing is, one more thing, is to forgive people, because the most uncomfortable thing, I think, for people is silence.
Hmm.
And so to avoid silence, we say dumb things. And dumb things, they don't help. And sometimes for people who are really fresh in their grief, they're kind of crushing, you know.
Yeah.
And so I remember on the day of my son's funeral, a lady who said, you know, well, God just needed another angel, and we have to see it that way. And
Hmm.
I wanted to say, well, God makes angels. And if he wanted an angel, why didn't he take yours? You know, why did he take mine? So, but I didn't. You know, you just have to forgive them and realize that before your loss, that was you
Yeah.
trying to say something that doesn't make any sense. And you hope it helps, and it doesn't. And it's better to say nothing. But people do say. So I think that one of the things I've learned is just encouraging people, just forgive your friends and family because they don't know what else to say.
Yeah. And I think that's a great insight, just to be ready to forgive. And I think that, for the most part, people mean well and they want to help, and, they have the right intentions. And so, I know one of the hardest things to do for some people after they've experienced grief is to come back to worship. And that's sometimes awkward for all the members because they don't know what to do. And so what should maybe members of a church be aware of when someone does first return, after a period of grief? What are some things that maybe they need to be, looking for?
Yeah, that's a really good question because even as a minister, my experiences at church was hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't relate this necessarily to everyone's loss, but when you've lost a child, that's out of the natural order. You're not supposed to outlive your children. And so you have a lot of questions for God about why he allowed this to happen and what does this mean? And I thought, it feels like you've broken some promises. I can say, I know you haven't because I know that's the right answer, but it feels like you have. And so I don't understand. There's a lot. So your faith can take some abuse during this time. And I remember I remember the songs that we were singing taking on a different meaning and being very strange to me. And so I'm not picking on this song. I remember singing Be Happy.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot sing this song. At first, I can't just sing and be happy, And then second, these lyrics make no sense to me whatsoever. These have nothing to do with real life, And I can sing that song now. It's not my favorite, but I think that the songs are hard, and being around everybody is hard because, again, they don't know what to say. So I think that the church should remember when somebody comes back that this is not an easy experience, that there's some wrestling with faith going on here and some wrestling with God, which God can handle. Is okay. Because somebody wonders about, where is God in all of this, doesn't mean that they've given up on God or they have no faith. So I think that's important to remember. A hug and an I love you. Would you like to sit by me? Would you like to have lunch after church? Just ordinary things that take on new meaning when you're hurting so bad. And I would say to anyone who's going through a period of grief that it's okay for a while to come late and leave early, because a lot of people do that just because that's their habit. But for you and someone who's in grief, that takes away the 100 questions people want to ask or the things people say. Sit in the back, worship as you can, go ahead and go, and God will be very gracious to you, and it won't be a long time before you can come back and sort of get in the swing of things. But I think church members need to be gracious to people who are just doing the best they can to even be there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, final question here. What does the resurrection mean to you?
As we head into Easter, I think that the resurrection is the evidence that who Jesus claimed to be is the truth, that he really is the Messiah. And it tells me that life after death is real. I'm not just believing a myth or something some philosophers got together and talked about, but that life after death is a reality. And because life after death is a reality, and because Jesus is who he says he is and said what he said, we can believe it, then that tells me that I will see my loved ones again. And I believe we will know our loved ones in heaven. I think it will be beyond our ability to describe or imagine how that's going to be. I was thinking the other day about children. And will children be children in heaven? Would they be young forever? But there are a lot of people who lose their children when they're very young.
Yeah.
And how old will they be in heaven? I don't know. But I do think that God has that all taken care of. And so I'm grateful for that. But I do think that there really is a great reunion day coming ahead. And so, that's why the resurrection is important to me. It is the cornerstone of everything else. If you take it out, everything else crumbles. Yeah. So that's where we take our stand.
Mm-hmm. Well, John, I so appreciate you joining me today and opening up and being willing to share. I think that what you've said here is going to be very helpful to people who watch this. And so thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. All right. Well, everybody be looking for a video next week.